Captain Jake Morrison adjusted his dress uniform one final time as the transport ship approached. Galactic Council Station Omega-7, the massive structure hung in space like a gleaming jewel against the starfield, its crystalline spires reaching out in all directions. This was humanity's moment. After 3 months of careful negotiations following first contact, Earth was finally being inducted into the Galactic Federation. Lieutenant Amy Parker sat across from him in the shuttle, reviewing her security protocols on a datapad. Her blonde hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her blue eyes focused intently on the screen. What made the scene unusual was the small orange tabby cat curled up on her shoulder, purring softly as it dozed. "You sure bringing Whiskers was a good idea?" Morrison asked, glancing at the cat. Parker scratched behind the cat's ears. The council approved it. "They said bringing examples of Earth culture would help with integration? Besides, Whiskers has been on 17 diplomatic missions. He's more experienced than half the crew," Morrison nodded. The cat had indeed been Parker's constant companion since she joined the diplomatic corps. Whiskers had a strange talent for reading situations and people, often alerting Parker to potential problems before they became serious. The Brass had finally made him an unofficial member of the security team. The shuttle docked with the station with barely a tremor. Morrison stood and straightened his jacket. "Ready to make history, Lieutenant?" "Always, sir." The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were made of some translucent material that shifted colors as they walked. Alien script floated in the air, translating itself into English as they passed. Their escort was waiting in the main corridor. Zixtala stood nearly 8 feet tall, her insectoid features gleaming under the station's soft lighting. Her forearms moved in complex patterns as she spoke, a habit Morrison had learned indicated excitement or nervousness. "Welcome, Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Parker," Zixtala said, her voice carrying a musical quality through the universal translator. "The Council eagerly awaits this historic moment." Behind her stood Grix, a reptilian being whose scales shifted from green to blue as he observed the humans. His large eyes fixed on Whiskers immediately. "Fascinating," Grix hissed softly. "The small creature appears to be some form of earth mammal." "This is Whiskers," Parker said, gently lifting the cat from her shoulder. "He's what we call a domestic cat. They're common pets on Earth." Whiskers opened his green eyes and surveyed the aliens with the bored expression cats reserved for anything that wasn't food or a threat. He yawned, showing small white teeth, then settled back into Parker's arms. "Adorable," Zixtala cooed, reaching out with one of her smaller arms to touch the cat's fur. "So soft and peaceful. What purpose does it serve?" "Companionship, mostly," Morrison replied. "Cats have lived alongside humans for thousands of years. They're excellent judges of character." As if to prove the point, Whiskers began purring, a low rumble that seemed to relax everyone in the corridor. The aliens exchanged what Morrison had learned were expressions of delight. "The sound is quite soothing," Grix observed. "Your species has developed remarkable partnerships with other life forms." They walked through the station's central hub, where dozens of different species went about their business. Some floated in environment suits filled with gas, others moved on multiple legs, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. All of them stopped to stare at the humans, particularly at the small furry creature in Parker's arms. The ceremony hall was impressive by any standard. A dome of clear metal provided a view of the surrounding nebula, its purple and gold clouds slowly swirling in the cosmic wind. Representatives from 47 different species sat in a circular arrangement, each in their own specialized environment pod. High Chancellor Morton, a tall avian being with brilliant blue feathers, stood at the center podium. His voice carried clearly through the hall as he began the formal proceedings. "Today marks a new chapter in galactic history," he announced. "We welcome the species known as humanity into our Federation of Worlds. May this partnership bring prosperity and peace to all." Morrison stepped forward to accept the ceremonial data crystal that would grant Earth full membership. As he reached for it, a maintenance droid in the upper levels began sparking and emitting warning sounds. the small robot designed to clean the dome's exterior surface, had clearly malfunctioned. Several aliens in the audience began making concerned noises as sparks rained down toward the delegates. The droid's movements became erratic, its cleaning arms flailing wildly as it descended toward the ceremony area. Morrison tensed, reaching for his ceremonial weapon, but before he could react, something orange and furry launched itself from Parker's arms. Whiskers moved with a speed that defied his earlier sleepy demeanor, his small body becoming a blur as he leaped from surface to surface. The cat reached the malfunctioning droid in seconds, landing on its back with perfect precision. His claws extended, finding critical circuit connections with surgical accuracy. The droid's system sparked once more, then went completely dead. Whiskers rode the disabled machine down to the floor, landing gracefully on his feet before calmly beginning to groom his paw. The entire hall had gone silent. 47 different species stared at the small cat as he continued his grooming routine, completely unconcerned by the attention. Did that small creature just neutralize a security threat? Grix whispered, his scales shifting to a darker shade. Parker walked over and picked up Whiskers, who resumed purring as if nothing had happened. "Good boy," she said softly, scratching his chin. "Lieutenant Parker," Morrison said carefully. "What exactly just happened?" Whiskers saw a potential threat and eliminated it, she replied matter-of-factly. "Standard security protocol." Zixtela's forearms were now moving in rapid, agitated patterns. That creature moved faster than our optical sensors could track. The precision of its attack was remarkable. How did it know which circuits to target? Grix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison realized the aliens were staring at Whiskers with a mixture of awe and something that might have been fear. Cats have excellent reflexes and problem-solving abilities. "They're natural hunters." "Hunters," Zixtela repeated slowly. "You said this creature is common on your world." "Very common," Parker confirmed. "Most human households have at least one cat, some have several." The silence stretched longer. Morrison could see the alien delegates exchanging glances and making subtle gestures in their various languages. The mood in the room had shifted from celebration to something more uncertain. High Chancellor Morden cleared his throat, a sound that came out as a complex warble. "Perhaps we should continue with the ceremony," he suggested, though his tone had lost some of its earlier enthusiasm. The formal proceedings resumed, but Morrison noticed that the aliens kept glancing at Whiskers throughout the rest of the ceremony. The cat, oblivious to the attention, had fallen asleep in Parker's arms, occasionally twitching his ears at interesting sounds. As they prepared to leave the station, Zixtela approached Morrison privately. "Captain, I must ask about these cat creatures. Are they trained for combat?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "Not exactly. They're just naturally good at protecting themselves and their families. It's instinct, and every human ship carries these creatures." "Most do. They're excellent companions for long space voyages." Zixtela's arms moved in what Morrison had learned was deep thought. "I see. Thank you for the information, Captain. It has been most enlightening." As their shuttle departed the station, Parker noticed the changed atmosphere. "Think we made a good impression?" Morrison watched the station shrink behind them, wondering why what should have been a routine ceremony had left him with so many questions. "I'm not sure, Lieutenant." "I'm not sure at all." Whiskers opened one green eye, yawned, and went back to sleep, completely unaware that he had just introduced the galaxy to Earth's most beloved predators. Dr. Kethmer stood in his laboratory aboard the research vessel Crystalline Dawn, studying the data streams flowing across his multiple viewing screens. The crystalline being's internal light pulsed in patterns that indicated deep concentration. As he reviewed footage from the human induction ceremony, the image of the small orange creature disabling the maintenance droid played repeatedly, each viewing revealing new details that troubled him. "Computer, slow the sequence to 1/10 speed," he commanded in his melodic voice. The holographic display complied, showing the cat's movement frame by frame. Even at this reduced speed, the creature's actions appeared almost supernatural. Its body seemed to flow like liquid as it navigated the complex three-dimensional space of the ceremony hall, finding the perfect trajectory to reach its target. Fascinating and disturbing, Kethmer muttered, making notes on his datapad. The reaction time suggests neural processing speeds far beyond what should be possible for a creature of this size. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Agent Vex materialized in the communication alcove, his amphibian features glistening under the chamber's moisture control system. The intelligence operative's large eyes showed signs of stress, their usual bright green color dulled to a muddy brown. "Doctor, I have completed my initial surveillance of human settlements in the Proxima sector," Vex reported. "The findings are concerning." Kethmer's internal illumination flickered with interest. "Show me what you have discovered." The laboratory's main display shifted to show security footage from various human outposts and colonies. The first clip showed a human home on New Terra, where a black and white cat sat motionless beside a small opening in the wall. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, with explosive speed, the cat's paw shot into the opening and emerged with a struggling rodent. "The creature waited for exactly the right moment," Vex explained. "It showed patience that would impress our best military strategists. Watch this next sequence." The display changed to show a human apartment where a tabby cat was apparently sleeping on a windowsill. Below, a small bird landed on the ledge outside. The cat's eyes snapped open, but it remained perfectly still. The bird moved closer, pecking at something on the window frame. In one fluid motion, the cat struck the glass with its paw, startling the bird into flight. "It was never actually hunting the bird," Vex continued. "This appears to be some form of recreational stalking. The creature hunts for pleasure, not just survival." Kethmer's light patterns shifted to worried amber. "Continue your report." "The most disturbing footage comes from Earth itself," Vex said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Our long-range sensors captured this." The screen filled with images of cats in various Earth environments. A gray cat in a garden casually caught a mouse, bit it once, and left it dead on a doorstep. Another cat, this one striped, stalked through tall grass before pouncing on something too small to see clearly. The camera zoomed in to show a collection of tiny corpses arranged in a neat row. "According to our analysis, these creatures kill billions of small animals annually on their home planet," Vex reported. "They appear to be incredibly efficient killers, yet the humans not only tolerate this behavior but actively encourage it." "That cannot be correct," Kethmer said, his crystalline structure resonating with disbelief. "No species would willingly coexist with such prolific predators. The evidence suggests otherwise. Watch this interaction." The display showed a human child playing with a small kitten in a garden. The kitten pounced on the child's moving finger, biting gently. The child laughed and continued the game. Suddenly, a large insect flew near the child's face. The kitten's demeanor changed instantly, becoming focused and alert. It leaped through the air and caught the insect in its claws before it could reach the child. "The creature switched from play mode to combat mode in milliseconds," Vex observed. "It appears to be programmed to protect its human companions." Kethmer studied the footage with growing alarm. "Have you been able to observe these creatures in space environments?" "Yes, and that is where the situation becomes truly concerning." Vex transmitted new files to the laboratory system. "I monitored several human cargo vessels during their routine operations." The first clip showed the cargo hold of a human freighter. Commander Rick Carter, a middle-aged human with graying hair, was inspecting storage containers when he noticed something moving in the shadows. He called out to his crew, pointing at what appeared to be a nest of space rats that had somehow gotten aboard during their last port visit. "Space rats have been a problem for cargo ships across the galaxy for decades," Vex explained. "They reproduce rapidly and can damage both cargo and ship systems. Most species require specialized pest control teams to eliminate them." The footage showed Carter walking away from the nest, shaking his head. "Boots, you see this?" he called. Out, a large black cat emerged from behind a nearby crate, stretching lazily. Carter pointed at the rat nest, and the cat's entire body language changed. Its ears flattened against its head, its pupils dilated, and its tail began twitching with controlled aggression. "What happened next defies belief," Vex whispered. The cat moved through the cargo hold like a shadow, using the containers and machinery as cover. Within minutes, it had systematically hunted down and eliminated every space rat in the hold. The creature's movements were silent, efficient, and deadly. When it finished, it returned to Carter, who scratched behind its ears and offered it a treat. "The human treated the systematic elimination of a pest problem as routine," Vex noted. "This suggests that such behavior is normal for these creatures." Kethmer's light patterns had shifted to deep red, indicating severe alarm. "Show me more." The next sequence came from a human agricultural colony on Kepler 442b, Lisa Brown. A young woman with short brown hair was working in her grain storage facility when she noticed signs of pest damage. Native insects had been eating through the stored crops, a problem that had destroyed similar facilities on other worlds. The colonists from other species had to abandon their agricultural efforts on this world, Vex explained. "The local insects are particularly aggressive and resistant to conventional pest control methods." The footage showed Lisa releasing 3 cats into the storage facility. The creatures immediately began exploring their new environment, sniffing at corners and investigating small openings. Within hours, they had located and eliminated the insect colonies that had been plaguing the facility. "The efficiency is remarkable," Vex continued. "What took other species months of expensive treatments, these creatures accomplished in a single day." Dr. Kethmer began pacing around his laboratory, his crystalline form casting dancing shadows on the walls. "This suggests that humans have not simply domesticated these creatures, but have weaponized them." "The evidence supports that conclusion," Vex agreed. "But there is more. I intercepted communications between human ships that suggest an even deeper relationship." The display showed a message log from a human deep space explorer. The captain's personal log mentioned how his cat, Smokey, had been acting strangely for several hours before they discovered a hull breach in a cargo bay. The cat had apparently detected the problem before their sophisticated sensors registered any issues. "The creatures appear to have sensory capabilities that exceed human technology," Vex reported. "They can detect problems that escape advanced monitoring systems." Kethmer stopped pacing and faced the communication alcove. "Agent Vex, based on your observations, what is your assessment of the threat these creatures pose?" Vex's skin color shifted to a sickly yellow, indicating extreme stress. "Doctor, I believe we are dealing with a species that has formed a symbiotic relationship with apex predators. These cats are not pets in any sense that we understand. They are living weapons that humans have integrated into their daily lives. And every human ship carries these creatures, most of them, yes. The humans consider them essential for long-term space travel. They provide what humans call emotional support, but based on my observations, they also serve as early warning systems, pest control units, and personal protection devices." Dr. Kethmer's internal light dimmed to a worried purple. "We must report this to the Galactic Council immediately. If humans are spreading these creatures throughout the galaxy, we need to understand the full implications." As Vex's transmission ended, Kethmer began compiling his report. The images of cats casually eliminating various prey species filled his screens, each one more unsettling than the last. The galaxy had welcomed humanity as a peaceful species seeking friendship and cooperation, but the evidence suggested they had invited something far more dangerous into their midst, he thought about the small orange cat that had disabled the maintenance droid with such casual efficiency. At the time, it had seemed like a fortunate accident. Now, he realized it had been a glimpse of humanity's true nature. They didn't just live alongside killers. They had made them part of their family. The report would be ready within the hour. But Kethmer suspected the galaxy would never be the same once the Council learned the truth about Earth's murder Mittens. High Chancellor Morden stood at the head of the Emergency Council chamber, his brilliant blue feathers ruffled with agitation. The massive circular room buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 Different species took their positions in their environmental pods. This was only the third emergency session called in the past century, and the reason for this gathering was unlike anything the Galactic Federation had faced before. "Esteemed colleagues," Morden began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced sound systems, "we have received disturbing intelligence regarding our newest members, the humans, and their companion creatures." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing Dr. Kethmer's compiled footage of cats in action. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the small furry creatures demonstrated their lethal efficiency across multiple environments. General Flux, a gaseous being contained within a specialized atmospheric suit, spoke first. His voice carried an electronic undertone through his communication device. "The speed and precision of these attacks suggest military training. How many of these creatures do the humans possess?" Ambassador Kalanara, whose species resembled living coral, pulsed with worried orange patterns. "Our intelligence suggests billions of these creatures exist on the human homeworld alone. They have spread them throughout their colonial territories." The chamber filled with alarmed sounds as the implications sank in. Species that communicated through color changes began flashing warning patterns, while those who used sound created a cacophony of distress calls. "Order, please," Morden called out, raising his wings for attention. "We must approach this situation with careful analysis, not panic." The holographic display shifted to show footage from Agent Vex's surveillance. The delegates watched as cats eliminated space rats with surgical precision, their movements too fast for most optical sensors to track clearly. The systematic nature of their hunting patterns was unmistakable. Representative Zixtella, who had been present at the human induction ceremony, spoke up from her pod. "I witnessed one of these creatures in action personally. It moved faster than our security systems could detect and neutralize the threat with perfect accuracy. At the time, I thought it was trained specifically for protection duties." "The evidence suggests otherwise," General Flux replied, his form shifting within his containment suit. "These creatures appear to be natural-born killers that humans have somehow integrated into their society." Dr. Kethmer's crystalline form materialized in the chamber's communication area, his internal light pulsing with urgent patterns. "Honored representatives, my analysis indicates that these cats are not trained weapons but rather apex predators in their natural state. The humans have coexisted with them for thousands of years." The revelation sent new waves of concern through the chamber. Several smaller species began what appeared to be panic responses, their representatives making rapid gestures in their native languages. "Dr. Kethmer," called out Counselor Vrim, whose rocky exterior showed stress fractures, "what threat level do these creatures pose to other species?" "The data is troubling," Kethmer replied, his form brightening as he accessed his files. A single cat could theoretically eliminate hundreds of smaller beings before being stopped. Their night vision, silent movement, and retractable claws make them perfect infiltrators. The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter again. Representative Silthic, whose species stood only 2 feet tall, made rapid clicking sounds that the universal translator rendered as urgent requests for protection protocols. "The most disturbing aspect," Kethmer continued, "is that humans appear completely comfortable with these creatures. They allow them to roam freely through their living spaces, even permitting them to sleep in their beds." General Flux's gaseous form swirled more rapidly. "This suggests either supreme confidence in their ability to control these predators or complete indifference to the danger they pose." "Or," suggested Ambassador Kalanara, her coral-like surface now pulsing deep red, "it indicates that humans themselves are so dangerous that they see no threat in creatures that terrify the rest of us." The implications of this statement created an even deeper silence in the chamber. The idea that humans might be more dangerous than their killer companions was a possibility none of them had considered. Morden spread his wings wide, a gesture that commanded attention. "We have requested that the human ambassador address these concerns directly." Ambassador Steve Rogers will join us shortly, along with a human expert on these creatures. The chamber's main entrance dilated to admit the human delegation. Ambassador Rogers entered with his typical confident stride, his dark hair neatly combed and his diplomatic uniform pristine. Behind him walked Dr. Nina Walsh, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair who carried herself with the calm assurance of someone comfortable with animals. "Honored representatives," Rogers began, "I understand you have concerns about cats, our companion animals. Dr. Walsh is one of Earth's leading experts on feline behavior and can address your questions." Dr. Walsh stepped forward, activating a small holographic projector. "I brought some materials that might help explain the relationship between humans and cats." The display showed a human home where a family interacted with several cats. The scene appeared peaceful, with cats lounging in sunny windows and playing with small toys. Then the presentation shifted to show cat behaviors that Dr. Walsh considered normal and beneficial. "This is called the slow blink," she explained, as the footage showed a cat looking directly at a human and slowly closing and opening its eyes. "It's a sign of trust and affection." The alien delegates interpreted this very differently. To species that relied on constant visual awareness for survival, the deliberate closing of eyes while maintaining a direct stare seemed like a predator marking its target. "This behavior is called purring," Dr. Walsh continued, as the audio system filled with the low rumbling sound of a contented cat. "It indicates happiness and relaxation." The sound sent several smaller species into defensive postures. To beings whose predators made similar low-frequency sounds before attacking, purring sounded like a threat display. "And this is kneading," Dr. Walsh said, showing footage of a cat pushing its paws alternately against a human's lap. "It's a sign of comfort and affection, similar to behavior they showed their mothers as kittens." The alien observer saw something entirely different. The rhythmic pushing motion with extended claws looked like practice for disemboweling prey, a technique many galactic predators used to subdue larger victims. Each explanation Dr. Walsh provided only made the situation worse. Her calm descriptions of normal cat behaviors were being interpreted as evidence of sophisticated predatory programming. Representative Zixtela raised one of her forearms. "Dr. Walsh, you mentioned that cats show this behavior to their mothers. Do adult cats view humans as parental figures?" "In some ways, yes," Dr. Walsh replied cheerfully. "Many experts believe cats see humans as large, somewhat clumsy cats in their social structure." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If cats viewed humans as members of their own species, it suggested a level of integration that went beyond simple domestication. General Flux's form began spinning rapidly. "Are you saying that these predators have adopted humans into their pack structure?" "Something like that," Dr. Walsh confirmed. "Cats are very social animals despite their reputation for independence. They form strong bonds with their human families." Counselor Ream's rocky surface developed new stress fractures. "Dr. Walsh, how do humans maintain control over creatures that appear to be natural-born killers?" Dr. Walsh looked confused by the question. "We don't control them. That's not how the relationship works. Cats choose to live with us because we provide food, shelter, and companionship. In return, they offer the same things to us." The revelation that humans didn't actually control their cats created a new level of alarm in the chamber. The idea that these efficient killers were free agents who simply chose to associate with humans was even more disturbing than the thought of them being trained weapons. Ambassador Rogers sensed the growing tension. "Perhaps we should discuss specific concerns you might have about cats aboard human vessels." "The concern," Morden said slowly, "is that you have essentially brought an army of micro-predators into galactic space without informing anyone of their true nature." Rogers looked genuinely surprised. "They're just cats. They're harmless to anything larger than a mouse." "The footage suggests otherwise," General Flux replied, his electronic voice carrying a note of accusation. The emergency session continued for several more hours, but with each attempt to explain cat behavior, the humans only managed to make the situation worse. By the time the delegates began to disperse, several species had already begun drafting legislation to ban human ships from their territories, unless they agreed to leave their murder mittens at home. As the chamber emptied, Dr. Walsh turned to Ambassador Rogers with a bewildered expression. "I don't understand what went wrong. I thought I explained everything clearly." Rogers watched the last of the alien delegates file out, their postures indicating fear and mistrust. "I think that's exactly the problem, Doctor. We explained it too clearly." President Helen Clark sat behind her desk in the Oval Office, reviewing the diplomatic reports that had been flooding in from across the galaxy. The emergency session at the Galactic Council had created a crisis that threatened to undo months of careful relationship building with their new alien allies. Her chief of staff had already fielded requests from 17 different species asking Earth to voluntarily restrict cats from human vessels. "This is absurd," she muttered, scrolling through another formal complaint about the dangers posed by domestic cats. "We're talking about house pets, not weapons of mass destruction." Her communication console chimed with an incoming priority transmission from the Lunar Command Base. Colonel Matt Stone's weathered face appeared on the screen, his military bearing evident even through the holographic projection. "Madam President, we've received formal demands from the Galactic Council. They want us to agree to a complete ban on cats aboard any human vessel entering alien space," Stone reported, his voice carrying barely concealed irritation. "President." Clark leaned back in her chair, considering the implications. "What's the military's position on this, Colonel?" "Frankly, ma'am, it's not negotiable. Our psychological evaluations show that cats are essential for crew morale during long deployments. They reduce stress, provide emotional support, and help maintain mental health in isolated environments. Removing them would significantly impact our operational effectiveness." The president nodded thoughtfully. She had grown up with cats herself and understood their importance to human well-being. "What about the alien perspective? Do we have any insight into why they're so concerned?" Stone's expression grew more serious. "Intelligence suggests they view cats as some form of biological weapon. They're interpreting normal feline behavior as evidence of predatory programming designed for combat operations." "That's ridiculous," Clark said, but even as she spoke, she could see how alien species might misinterpret the natural hunting instincts that made cats such effective companions. The communication system chimed again, this time with an urgent message from the lunar base. Commander Helen Wright's voice came through the speakers with barely controlled alarm. "Madam President, we have a situation developing at Luna Base. Ambassador Quinter of the Aquatic Alliance has arrived for emergency negotiations. But there's been an incident." President Clark felt her stomach tighten. The Aquatic Alliance represented 12 water-based species and was one of the most influential groups in the Galactic Federation. "What kind of incident?" The base cat Mittens presented the ambassador with what appears to be a dead space mouse. The ambassador's species interprets gift-giving as either a declaration of friendship or a formal challenge to combat. Given that the gift was a corpse, they've concluded it represents the latter. The president closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. "Of course it does. Is there anything we can do to explain the misunderstanding?" Dr. Alex Kim from the Animal Behavior Institute is already en route to the base. She's hoping to provide context for the ambassador, but the situation is delicate. 3 hours later, Dr. Kim found herself in the most unusual diplomatic meeting of her career. The lunar base's main conference room had been modified to accommodate Ambassador Quinter's aquatic requirements, with a specialized tank allowing the dolphin-like being to participate in the discussion. "Ambassador," Dr. Kim began carefully, "I want to explain what happened with Mittens and the mouse. In cat behavior, bringing prey to humans is actually a sign of affection and care." Quinter's translator device rendered his response in flat, mechanical tones. "You are saying that this creature killed another being as an expression of positive emotion." "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds worse than it is," Dr. Kim admitted. "Cats are natural hunters. When they bring prey to their human companions, they're sharing their success. It's similar to how humans might bring gifts to show they care about someone. The ambassador's large eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Dr. Kim, are you suggesting that humans also kill other beings as expressions of affection? No, of course not. Humans and cats have different ways of showing care. Cats hunt because it's their natural instinct, but they share the results with their families as a social bonding behavior. Quinter was silent for a long moment, his sleek form moving slowly through the water in his tank. On my world, creatures that kill for pleasure are considered the most dangerous predators. You are telling me that humans voluntarily live with such beings and interpret their killing as friendship. Dr. Kim realized she was making the situation worse with every explanation. Ambassador, cats don't kill for pleasure exactly. They hunt. Because millions of years of evolution have programmed them to do so. It's as natural to them as swimming is to your species. But you said they are no longer wild animals? You called them domestic companions. They are domestic, but they retain their natural instincts. That's part of what makes them such good companions. They can take care of themselves and help protect their human families. The ambassador's translator crackled with what sounded like distress signals. You are saying that despite thousands of years of coexistence, these creatures have remained unchanged from their wild ancestors? In many ways, yes. That's actually one of the remarkable things about cats. They've maintained their independence and natural abilities while choosing to live alongside humans. Quinter's movements became more agitated. Dr. Kim, if these creatures are essentially wild predators, how do humans maintain any control over them? We don't control them. That's not how the relationship works. Cats choose to stay with us because we provide food, shelter, and companionship. But they're free to leave whenever they want. The ambassador's silence stretched longer this time. When he finally spoke, his translated voice carried a note of what could only be described as horror. You are telling me that humans have been living as willing captives to apex predators for thousands of years? No, we're not captives, we're partners. Cats depend on us for certain things, and we depend on them for others. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. What do you depend on them for? Dr. Kim hesitated, realizing that her answer would likely be misinterpreted. Emotional support, companionship, pest control, and sometimes early warning about potential dangers. Early warning about dangers, Quinter repeated slowly. You use these predators as security devices. Not exactly. Cats are just naturally alert to their environment. They might notice things that humans miss, but it's not like they're trained guards. The ambassador's agitation increased. Dr. Kim, you have described creatures that kill for instinct, remain wild despite domestication, operate independently of human control, and serve as both emotional support and security systems. In what sense are these beings not living weapons? Dr. Kim felt the weight of the diplomatic crisis settling on her shoulders. Every attempt to explain the human-cat relationship seemed to confirm the aliens' worst fears about Earth's murder. Mittens. Ambassador, I understand how this might sound concerning to someone unfamiliar with cats, but they're really quite gentle with humans. Most cats would never harm a person. Most cats, Quinter noted, but some would? Well, if they felt threatened, or if someone was trying to hurt their human family, they might defend themselves. But that's true of any animal. The ambassador's form went completely still in the water. So these creatures are programmed to protect their human companions through violence if necessary? I wouldn't say programmed exactly. They're just loyal to their families. Loyal predators with independent judgment about when to use lethal force, Quinter summarized. Dr. Kim, do you understand why this information might be concerning to species that could be easily killed by these creatures? Dr. Kim finally grasped the full scope of the problem. From the perspective of smaller alien species, cats weren't cute companions but efficient killing machines that humans had somehow convinced to work with them. The fact that this relationship was based on mutual affection rather than control made it even more disturbing. Ambassador, I'm beginning to understand your concerns, she said carefully. But I want to assure you that cats pose no threat to peaceful beings who aren't trying to harm humans. How can you guarantee that these independent predators will make that distinction? Dr. Kim realized she couldn't answer that question in any way that would comfort the ambassador. Cats did indeed make their own decisions about threats, and their judgment wasn't always perfect, the meeting ended with Quinter requesting immediate consultation with his government about the safety of continued diplomatic relations with humanity. As Dr. Kim left the lunar base, she knew that her well-intentioned explanations had only deepened the galactic community's fear of Earth's beloved murder Mittens. Back on Earth, President Clark received the report of the failed diplomatic mission. With growing frustration, the galaxy's fear of cats was becoming a serious obstacle to human integration into the galactic community, and every attempt to address their concerns only seemed to make things worse. As she reviewed the situation, Clark couldn't help but wonder if the aliens might have a point. Maybe humans were uniquely crazy for choosing to live with small, efficient predators and treating them as family members. But crazy or not, it was too late to change. Captain Ben Torres stood in the command center of Research Station Phoenix, watching the sensor displays with growing alarm. The massive structure hung in the void between star systems, serving as a joint research facility for both human and alien scientists. The station's mixed crew of 43 beings from 12 different species had been working together peacefully for 6 months, but that cooperation was about to be tested in the most extreme way possible. "Captain, we're detecting multiple ships approaching our position," reported Lieutenant Karen Hayes from the communications station. "They're not responding to our hails, and their energy signatures match Void Hunter vessels." Torres felt his stomach drop. The Void Hunters were the galaxy's most feared raiders, a species that had been terrorizing the Outer Rim for decades. Their ships were fast, their weapons were devastating, and they showed no mercy to anyone who crossed their path. "How many ships?" he asked, moving to the tactical display. 15 confirmed vessels, sir. They'll be within weapons range in 20 minutes. Dr. Sarah Mitchell looked up from her research station, her face pale with worry. "Captain, our defensive systems weren't designed to handle a force that size. The station's shields can maybe stop 3 or 4 ships, but 15? Torres nodded grimly. The research station had been built for scientific work, not military defense. They had some basic weapons and shields, but nothing that could stand against a full Void Hunter raid fleet. "Send a distress signal to all nearby vessels," he ordered. "Full emergency broadcast, and begin evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the attack, Torres noticed something odd. The station's cats, normally scattered throughout the facility, were beginning to gather in unusual locations. Mr. Whiskers, his own gray tabby, had positioned himself near the main air circulation intake. Other cats were moving toward ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and other access points throughout the station. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" Torres asked, pointing to the security monitors that showed cats moving with purpose through the corridors. Dr. Mitchell paused in her evacuation preparations to look at the screens. "That's strange. They're acting like they sense something we don't." Representative Zixthella, who had been working on a joint research project, approached the command station. Her forearms moved in nervous patterns as she watched the tactical display. "Captain Torres, what are our chances of surviving this attack?" Torres considered lying to spare her feelings, but decided on honesty. "Not good. We might be able to hold them off for a few hours, but with 15 ships, they'll eventually break through our defenses." Grix, the reptilian observer who had been documenting human-alien cooperation, stood nearby with his scales shifting to worried brown colors. "Perhaps we should consider surrender. The Void Hunters sometimes spare those who offer no resistance." "The Void Hunters don't take prisoners," Torres replied. "They're here to destroy the station and everyone on it." The first enemy ships entered. Weapons range exactly 20 minutes later. The station's automated defense systems opened fire, sending streams of energy toward the approaching vessels. The Void Hunters returned fire with devastating efficiency, their weapons tearing through the station's outer shields like paper. "Hull breach in Section 7, reported Lieutenant Hayes. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we're losing atmosphere." The Station shuddered as more enemy fire struck its hull. Torres watched the tactical display as the defense systems failed one by one. They had maybe 10 minutes before the Void Hunters breached the main hull and began boarding the station. "Captain, I'm detecting boarding pods launching from the enemy." "Ships," Hayes announced. "They're going to try to take the station from the inside." Torres drew his sidearm and checked the charge. "All hands, prepare for boarding action." "They're coming in whether we're ready or not?" The first boarding pod struck the station's hull with a thunderous crash. Emergency lights flickered as the raiders began cutting through the outer bulkheads. Torres could hear the whine of cutting. Torches as the Void Hunters prepared to break into the station's interior. Then something unexpected happened. The cats throughout the station suddenly went silent. Mr. Whiskers, who had been sitting calmly near the air intake, stood up and began moving with fluid grace toward the nearest ventilation shaft. His usual lazy demeanor had been replaced by something Torres had never seen before: focused, predatory intent. "Sarah, look at the internal monitors," Torres said, his voice filled with wonder. The security screens showed cats moving through the station's maintenance tunnels with military precision. They moved silently through the narrow spaces, using their natural agility to navigate passages that would be impossible for larger beings. Their eyes reflected the emergency lighting, giving them an eerie, supernatural appearance. The first Void Hunter broke through the hull breach in Section 7, its massive form squeezing through the opening. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, with thick armor plating and multiple weapon systems integrated into its body. It moved forward confidently, expecting to find terrified victims hiding in the corridors. Instead, it found something waiting in the shadows. A small black cat named Shadow had positioned itself above the breach point, using the twisted metal to remain hidden. As the Void Hunter passed beneath, Shadow dropped silently onto the raider's back, finding the weak point where the armor plating met the creature's neck. The Void Hunter's death cry echoed through the station as Shadow's claws found their mark. The cat leaped away before the creature hit the floor, disappearing back into the shadows to find its next target. "Did you see that?" Grix whispered, his scales turning pale with shock. More Void Hunters poured through the breach, but they found the station's corridors had become a nightmare. Cats attacked from every direction, using their speed and agility to strike at weak points in the raiders' armor. The creatures that had terrified the galaxy for decades were being systematically hunted by Earth's murder Mittens. Mr. Whiskers emerged from a ventilation shaft behind a group of Void Hunters, his gray fur standing on end with aggressive intent. He moved like liquid death, striking at exposed joints and vulnerable areas before vanishing again into the station's infrastructure. "This is incredible," Dr. Mitchell breathed, watching the security feeds. "They're working together like a coordinated military unit." Torres realized what was happening. The cats weren't just randomly attacking the invaders. They were implementing a strategic plan, using their knowledge of the station's layout to create ambush points and escape routes. Each cat knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Representative Zixtela watched in amazement as a tabby cat named Patches disabled a Void Hunter's weapon system with surgical precision. "Captain Torres, how are they doing this?" "They're protecting their home," Torres replied, understanding flooding through him. "The station isn't just our workplace, it's their territory, and they're defending it." The tide of battle turned as more cats joined the fight. The Void Hunters, used to overwhelming their enemies through superior numbers and firepower, found themselves facing opponents they couldn't predict or counter. The cats used every advantage their evolution had given them: night vision, silent movement, lightning reflexes, and an instinctive understanding of how to kill. Within 30 minutes, the boarding parties had been eliminated. The surviving Void Hunter ships, faced with the mysterious destruction of their assault teams, began to withdraw. Their long-range sensors couldn't detect what had happened inside the station, but the silence from their boarding parties told them everything they needed to know. As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, the station's cats began returning to their normal routines. Mr. Whiskers walked back to Torres, sat down beside his feet, and began grooming his paw as if nothing unusual had happened. Captain, Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice filled with disbelief. The Void Hunters are retreating. All boarding parties have been neutralized. Torres reached down and scratched behind Mr. Whisker's ears. The cat purred contentedly, his gray fur still slightly ruffled from the battle. Good boy, Torres said softly. Representative Zixtela approached slowly, her forearms moving in patterns that Torres had learned indicated deep respect. Captain, I must apologize for my species' misunderstanding of your relationship with these remarkable creatures. They're not weapons, Torres explained, watching as other cats throughout the station settled back into their peaceful routines. They're family, and family protects each other? Dr. Mitchell was checking on a cat named Patches, who had sustained a minor injury during the fighting. The cat submitted to her examination with patient dignity, accepting her gentle care as his. The galaxy has been afraid of the wrong thing, she said. They thought cats were dangerous because they're killers. But they're not dangerous because they kill. They're wonderful because they choose who to protect. Grix approached Mr. Whiskers cautiously, his scales showing respectful green patterns. May I? He asked Torres. Torres nodded, and Grix slowly extended one clawed hand toward the cat. Mr. Whiskers sniffed the offered appendage carefully, then rubbed against it with a contented purr. He's accepting you as part of the family, Torres explained. That's the real secret of cats. They don't serve humans. They adopt us,